everyone. My name is Rafael Silva. I'm a doctorate student in UFMG, Universidade Federal de Minas Gerais, where I study classics. And today we have here Tiago de Melo Cordeiro, who will speak about his undergraduate thesis, The Portrayals of a Hero, Manhood and Heroism Unraveled by Two Distinct Narrators. And he'll present his reading, his interpretation of two recent novels with an adaptation or a rereading, a retelling of the War of Troy. Welcome, Tiago, and it's a great honor to have you here with us.
Thank you, Rafael. Thank you for having me here. So as you presented me this evening, I would like to present to you part of the research I developed throughout the last year. I graduated this year in English literature, and I developed this work, this sort of comparative work between two novels, and also between part of the Iliad and part of other literary works from classical Greece. So basically, I work with the two novels, The Song of Achilles and The Silence of the Girls. So here, this is how my presentation, these are the steps in presentation we take. I'll talk a little bit about the novels, why I chose them, how I conduct my research, what did I do, what kinds of theoretical framework I chose to work, why did I do that, so my objectives, and how the image of Achilles is rebuilt, is reconstructed in both novels. So about the classical reception, right? Both novels, they dialogue with the Iliad, they dialogue with this construction of the hero figure. But the main interest of my work was how the Song of Achilles and how the Silence of the Girls, how they recount the Trojan War, centered in the figure of Achilles, but mostly how this figure of Achilles can be interpreted by theories of masculinity. So, how both novels and both narrators were totally distinct of each other. They built the image of Achilles throughout these ideas of masculinity, throughout our knowledge about how masculinity is built. And the basic idea that I have is like Achilles can be seen under the focus of what we consider nowadays hegemonic masculinity. So how both novels also see Achilles, how they construct Achilles as this hegemonic figure, this heroic figure, this um, figure of hegemonic male dominance. Um, so how did I conduct my research? Because I'm working with not only contemporary novels, but also my work, it grasps other it grabs other works like the Iliad, the Odyssey, and other authors from classical antiquity. I chose to I chose two theories of masculinity to approach Achilles' figure. One concept that I use is to analyze Achilles in the Song of Achilles, for instance, is the concept of moments of engagement, which was coined by R.W. Connell, who is a sociologist very famous and who has been discussing masculinity since 1995. And I chose to do that because Connell points out that this moment of engagement is the moment that the boy he chooses to engage with hegemonic project of masculinity. He chooses to um, not to be around mother or any kind of feminine figure in his life. And these moments, they mostly happen during childhood and the beginning of adolescence. So because the Song of Achilles is a coming of age story, I thought that using the moments of engagement, when Achilles engages with this kind of masculinity, would be better to approach his figure in Miller's novel. However, again, because I'm working not only with these novels, but also because my work it converses, it dialogues with the Iliad, I to approach Achilles in the Silence of the Girls, I use two concepts that were coined by Barbara Graciosi about Homeric masculinities, which are proper maleness and excessive maleness. I also wanted to do that because the narrator of the Silence of the Girls is someone who's is a woman, is Briseis, and she is totally oppressed by Achilles' figure and by patriarchy, and I consider that using proper and excessive maleness already as kind of um, parts or ramifications of hegemonic masculinity because of the narrator. Since the narrator is someone who is oppressed by hegemonic masculinity, I saw that it would be better to work with concepts that were closer to what we consider hegemonic masculinity today. Uh, so, bottom line here, my objectives were to analyze how Miller and Barker reshaped Achilles as this hero, as this hegemonic ideal of masculinity, but also because, again, the Song of Achilles is a coming of age story told to us by the point of view of Patroclus. I study both processes of masculinization using Connell, mostly Connell's theory, and to try to point out what are the differences between uh, the Achilles Briseis shows us in the Silence of the Girls, and the Achilles Patroclus shows us in the Song of Achilles. So, how these Achilles are reconstructed? How this image of Achilles is rebuilt? We have the Achilles in the Iliad. We have this sort of image of the hero kind of set on stone for us. However, the Achilles Miller writes, the Achilles Barker's rewrites. They're different from the Achilles Homer shows us. The Achilles Homer's puts to us to his audience. So to try to reconstruct, to try to interpret this Achilles in both novels, I use, as I said, theories of masculinity. Connell, Seidler, Alex Hobbs, and Graciosi, and mostly the Achilles' process of masculinization in the Song of Achilles. I use what we consider the moment of engagement, but also considering the Song of Achilles, and also considering what an author named Thomas van Noordwijk points out that Patroclus in the Iliad is not only Achilles' friend, or Patroclus can be also considered Achilles' second self. So it's like everything Achilles does, Patroclus does the opposite. Every face Achilles shows his audience, Patroclus shows the opposite. And this is quite clear in the Song of Achilles. Uh, when Achilles is kind of almost brutal, or when he's kind of um, when he does not, I don't know, does not respect girls or women. Patroclus shows this opposite side. When Achilles is this um, epitome of warrior skill, Patroclus, for instance, chooses not to fight. He even chooses not to learn how to fight. So I use this. So since Patroclus is so different of Achilles in Miller's novel, I also analyze his process of masculinization as opposite and complementary to Achilles' process. And um, also, what I try to highlight in my research is to what extent gender and narrativity can be connected, can be intertwined. Because, again, The Silence of the Girls and the Song of Achilles, they have two different narrators, Patroclus and Briseis, but both are non-hegemonic figures, are non-hegemonic narrators. So they would tell us different. They would highlight different points of the Trojan War story, for instance. So to analyze Achilles in the Silence of the Girls, I had to recur to what Graciosi calls proper mellowness and excessive mellowness, because in my interpretation, the Achilles Barcus rewrites is already hegemonic in what we consider hegemonic masculinity. So because of that, I used these concepts to point out in which moments of Barker's narrative Achilles shows us as or can be considered an example of proper mellowness, like the warrior who fights but also who protects his his kin, or when his mellowness but endangers the survival, not only his survival but the survival of the Greek army. And also, how is how we how a female narrator can depict hegemonic masculinity. So that's another thing that I wanted to research. And what is interesting in the Silence of the Girls is that there are moments that Briseis does not seem to be speaking only about her experience in the war field or in a Greek war camp. Some parts of her narrative can be intertwined with the experience of women in war, and because of that, I chose to approach, and I chose to connect gender and narrativities. So to what extent the gender of a narrator can 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 build a story and can interfere with the outcome or with our interpretation. So to close my brief presentation here, my first and foremost, what I could conclude is hegemonic masculinity is connected to the soldier, to the hero figure, and this is uh, outlined in this process of masculinization in the Song of Achilles, because the hero and the soldier figure, this idea of being the greatest hero of his generation, this idea of being the greatest man of his generation, um, have a great power, a great influence in Achilles' destiny, and also in the outcome. Not only Achilles' outcome, but also in Patroclus. Another point is, since both narrators, they are even not to the same extent, but both are directly harmed by the patriarchal structure. Patroclus is considered weak. He's considered what Connell classifies as a uh, subordinate masculinity. How is the depiction of an hegemonic hero, of a hegemonic male, through the eyes of a narrator who is not hegemonic and who does not share the same values, the same principles of a Greek war hero, for instance? Also, what's most important in these stories is the not only the Silence of the Girls, not only the Song of Achilles, but to have other novels that have been approaching ancient narratives. So you have the Penelope, you have the A Thousand Sheep, you have a bunch of novels, most of them being written by women who try to give new voices to this, kind of give voices to the ones who were voiceless in the past. So it's not coincidental that both narrators are non-hegemonic, because here we have the point of view of a female author who chose to tell a story that had been told many times, but through another point of view. So I chose to these works because they give this new new breath, this new air to these stories. But because what these novels show us is that not only Breezes and not only Patroclus, not only the Trojan women were harmed by this hegemonic uh, project of male dominance. Achilles is also hurt by it. Hector is also hurt by it, and through the point of view of a narrator who does not share um, bravery, or who does not share this view that bravery is important, that warrior skills are important to be a man. They also show us how these other characters are harmed by their principles, by their ideas of what a man should be, what a warrior should be. And this is, for me, this was the most important thing throughout my entire work. Here's some information if you want to keep track. The some of the works I used to write my undergraduate thesis. Gracios, Barker, Lancer, so some of them. And I'd like again to thank you, Rafael, for the opportunity to be here and presenting my work. And I'm open to to questions now.
Thank you very much, Tiago. Your thesis, as I have already said, is very interesting, and I think that reflecting about the works, contemporary works, and retellings of ancient myths and ancient tales is quite interesting, not only to understand many issues that are going on today, as for example, many gender debates, some critics of ethnocentrism in classics, for example, in classical studies, but also as a way of really understanding in different ways how these tales were were passed on. And for example, when Briseis recounts her version of the War of Troy, we really have a glimpse of what may have been the experience of a war prisoner in antiquity, and it's quite, for me at least, um, tormenting in a way to see it from this perspective, and not having been able to see it before that. I mean, when we read the Iliad, Briseis has some moving passages, foremost in the book 18, I think, when Patroclus is dead and she veils, she weeps for him, and she has very moving phrases about her own condition
Yes.
as a female captive. But normally we don't get to hear uh, these non-hegemonic figures in the traditional versions of the tales, huh?
Yes, yes, you're right. I think that Breezes only speaks once, right? Like you said in the Iliad. So, a poem with, I don't know, 16,000 lines, 17,000 lines. Like a few lines are spoken by a woman, by not only any woman, like a slave, right? And also, uh, this the scene of she's where she's weeping for Patroclus, where she's uh grieving her loss. Barker points out that she's not only weeping for Patroclus, she's also weeping for the entire life, those who she has lost, but she hadn't the opportunity to do that before, and this is quite sad. This is true, right? She didn't have time to weep for her brothers, for her mother, for her husband, and when Patroclus dies, like any sort of feeling that is suppressed, it just goes out. And like imagine the situation, you cannot grieve those you've lost because of the war, because you were in war camp, because you're in the enemy camp. So, and then she and this is she takes this opportunity, right? even though she doesn't know that she's doing that, but she takes the opportunity. She starts weeping for everyone she has lost during the war, and this was very delicate. The scene was very delicate. In the way Barker writes the scene, was pretty delicate. At the same time, touching, right? And the same thing.
Yes, totally. I totally agree with you. And when we think about the Song of Achilles, we have also a non-hegemonic figure retelling the tale that is from Patroclus' point of view, and the way the narrator sees his own life, but also his relationship with Achilles is very different, and at the same time quite. I don't know how to say it, but quite respectful of the traditional tale. It has a lot of points of contact, but at the same time, Patroclus shows us a very different facet of Achilles, of the war, of being an ancient warrior, not totally, I think, capable of performing hegemonic masculinity, and that is Patroclus. He is the beloved one. Everyone seems to love him in a way because he's so helpful and so I don't know how to say it, but I think that Miller also presents us a very different picture of the war, a more human picture of the war. Maybe we could also question some idealization she presents in this picture is much less gruesome than The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker. And what do you think about that? Miller's project, is it really different from Pat Barker's?
Yes, I agree with you. Like when during the argument that you've mentioned these points, right? It's almost it's almost like nightly the way he behaves in war. And when I was researching for my undergraduate thesis, there's this point that like subordinate masculinity, which is the category that Patroclus sees in Miller's theory, has this characteristic that is this blur with the feminine. And Patroclus in the Song of Achilles, he's kind, he's delicate, he is almost chivalric, right? Almost like a knight walking in a shining armor, saving people or helping people all the way around, avoiding violence. And that's not quite true, not even to the image that Patroclus has in the Iliad, right? Patroclus is a warrior in the Iliad. He's skillful, he kills it, and but in the Song of, I think that's, like you said, it's Miller's project is more delicate, is more I think it conquests more because of the delicacy of Patroclus, of this sensitive narrator who avoids war, who does not like fighting, who was I think people can will thinking on a contemporary um, reader. Patroclus is more relatable, right? We do not like to think about, we're like, when we think about war, we try to avoid it the most time we can, we try to avoid it. And he's more relatable. He's like he's the man who loves a warrior, and he has to deal with that. And nevertheless, and that's why his image of Achilles is um kind of sugar culture is an image. So no, he's not like that. He's not this butcher that Briseis points in, he wants you to see him in the Silence of the Ghost. He's not this madman who kills, or he's not so arrogant. He's not so self-centered. No, he is like, he's kind. He returns Hector's body. He saves people, and he's not this, like you're saying. I'm trying to give you the image from the point of view of a lover, and a lover who does not fight. So I have this authority. I do not fight. I hate violence. I do not like war, and I do not like in the Song of Achilles, Patroclus saves Briseis from Agamemnon, right? He does not do anything to her because Patroclus kind of betrays Achilles. And then it's like, I do not like to see women suffer. I am a good guy here, so please believe my tale. Achilles is not this self-centered hero that you think he is. He's much more than that. And I am telling this because you would trust me because I'm kind and whatever. And we fell for that. I think when we read that, we fell for that. Like, no, maybe Achilles is not so bad. Maybe he's not so this like bloodthirsty hero. Maybe he's not like that at all. Because this guy here, I trust this guy. Thinking a modern reader, she was quite clever when she wrote him that way. Like we can trust him.
Yes, absolutely. And Miller explores Achilles and Patroclus' homosexuality quite openly, much more openly than, for example, the Iliad itself, where their relation is a little bit, I don't know how to describe it, a little bit.
It's kind of it's blurred too. Like you cannot tell whether it is whether it is a homoerotic relationship or whether it's just a friendship, and then it's kind of it works for both, right? For both ways. It's you cannot say for sure, oh, they were lovers or they were just friends. I mean,
Yes, exactly.
looking from our eyes, right? From our point of view, like they were not just friends, but maybe they were. Is there are no textual evidence enough to say that they were lovers or they were only friends.
Yes, exactly. Not in the Iliad, even if the ancient tradition had already guessed a lot of things in their relationship. And Plato, for example, in the Symposium, even mentions the idea of fighting for your love as a way, as a way of really fighting for something. And Achilles is a good example of that there. And Miller uses that, I think, to touch her audience with a very delicate issue nowadays, and a very important issue actually, on gender relations and also sexual identification and all. And as you said in your undergraduate thesis, the Song of Achilles is a Bildungsroman, and we really accompany Patroclus and Achilles growing up together and loving each other. And that's a very interesting point, I think, in her novel, as it really touches the audience. I think the young audience nowadays. Is that a one of the main, let's say, characteristics of her public, you think, or is only another?
Well, I think that because she's trying to rebuild these stories, she's trying to retell these stories, and I think for to us, contemporary readers, we read the Iliad and then we just come on, they were lovers, right? There's no point hiding this. For us, a modern reader, we think out why, and then I think she explores that again, like so how can I make my narrator? How can I make Patroclus more trustworthy? How can I make him touch more people? So I think that this is inside her literary project as well, because for instance, in Barker's novel, we cannot say for sure, and there's some point like some teasing, Odysseus teasing. Then like there's a particular part of Odysseus kinds of think Patroclus wants to go down history like Achilles lover boy. Like this is some sort of teasing, this is some homophobic comment by Odysseus. And for Barker, Barker does not clarify to us, and even Briseis has her doubts on the particular nature of Patroclus and Achilles' relationship. And in Miller, we do not have this. It's like you said, it's pretty open. It's like it's like Patroclus. This is my story. I'm telling you how I fell in love with this guy, but I'm telling you how we were. how our deaths are quite tragic because of that, because it's a it's a more context, and I think that's part of her literary project to rebuild the image of Achilles as this hegemonic hero, means also to rebuild this his image of an hegemonic male. And like I know that we must be careful when we're dealing with different periods of time. I'm talking about a modern readership, while the readership of the Iliad was totally different, and for them sexuality was a subject pretty different when they approached it. But there is for instance, for us, for Achilles be hegemonic, he must be or must be considered heterosexual. I think that in the movie Troy, they put Achilles as quite heterosexual, right? And this is a representation of Achilles in the media. So that's the Achilles we see. Is like, okay, he's a warrior, so he's a great soldier, so he must be heterosexual. But not that's not true for Miller. No, I want to rebuild him also as this male figure of hegemony of warrior hegemony. So and she does that approaching this point, like how he behaves towards women, how he behaves, how he deals with war, and his sexuality. So these are the points I particularly saw in the research. So how this his manhood is rebuilt, right? To women through war and through his sexuality. And putting Achilles as openly gay is quite a brave move, right? Like, okay, he for me he is gay and he's totally gay. There's no point hiding this out, and I think that this makes him better than the Achilles we are used to see, we're used to read, we're used to this image of Achilles we are used to. I think that's why thinking that what Miller could have, what she was perceiving in her project, like here, this is the Achilles I have, and this is the image of Achilles I rebuild. I think that's why she chose to do that.
Do you think contemporary works of art can help us understanding ancient works when they develop some characteristics that were left on the shade, left a little bit undeveloped, as for example, exploring Achilles' homosexuality, or as, for example, the movie Alexander explored Alexander's homosexuality, and the Greeks were very appalled by the obscene scenes of sex between him and Hephaestion. Do you think that?
Well, I like and you advised me before, and then when I was rereading some part of my works, like we must be careful when we're dealing with that. These are we're talking about a modern readership, with their own values, with their own ideas of homosexuality, of what and how this can blur our concepts, or how this can also help us to build these concepts of masculinity and femininity. But we also must be careful in how the Greeks dealt with that too, how they saw that too, and it was different from we see nowadays, right? It was uh, um it I mean, we have some common points, like um the point of who's the active, who's the passive. This is still nowadays thinking about modern sexuality or modern homosexuality. But I think they help us to, if we I think if we read them carefully, if we read these rewritings carefully, with bearing this in mind, like this is a retelling from a modern author, who has a different idea from how sexuality is built and how sexuality should be approached in a novel or in a work of art. So this is the Achilles Miller wrote. This is the Achilles Barker wrote, and this is the Achilles Homer wrote. So Homer is how many 2,000 years, 3,000 years from distance from Barker and Miller, right? So I think that's we must be careful. I think they help. I think they help us to be introduced in the classics. So I think it's important. If, by some chance you have read Barker or Miller's novel, it could be a good idea to give the Iliad a chance if people have not. So I think you should try to read both works like side by side and bearing this in mind. So they help to rebuild the images, but also pay attention to that. There is this image here, and this both images can coexist. I think that was what I was thinking when I put the title of my the portrayals. Right, we have this image of Achilles here in our minds, the Achilles in the Iliad, and also we have the other images of Achilles. And thinking on the nature of art, all images are true to him. All images are valid, and all images must be interpreted under the light of their own time, right? Border Achilles and Miller Achilles should be read by like or view like 21st century reader, and like during this the Achilles in the Iliad is totally different from that. But that does not mean that he's inferior or something like that. No, it's just he's different, and he. I think again, these works they help us to be introduced to the classics, or to I think to have some and to look at the classics not only as this difficult or uh highbrow thing. Like no, like this work comes out from this work here, so maybe there's a reason for that, right? And there is both should be read under concerns, and but different concerns and different approaches. So I think that yes, I think the work of art can change our views, but I not only change, but also I like enhance our points of view, right? It's like I have now like three, four, five ideas of or five portrayals of Achilles in my mind because of that, for instance, and all of them are should be approached, should be studied, should be interpreted, because all of them have something to add to the discussion.
That's very interesting because, as you mentioned, there is a kind of an urge nowadays of going back to the classics with new eyes, in a way, and revisioning some versions and some ideas of classics. And you mentioned, for example, Margaret Atwood's The Penelopead, but there is much more, a lot of new books doing this. You mentioned also A Thousand Ships. I
Mm-hmm.
forgot the name of the authors. Is
Natalie Haynes. I
Yeah,
thought.
that's it, Natalie Haynes. And even Madeline Miller wrote Circe, also 2018, I think. Well, there is a lot going on in these retellings of ancient myths. And how do you understand that kind of need of going back to something that had been seen as quite highbrow, as you said, quite a male thing, a white person thing? And reappropriating it in a way. How do you understand this tendency?
Um, Again, like I mentioned at some point before, most of these retellings, if we pay attention, they were rewritten by female authors, right? So I think I agree with you. It's like it's a sort of taking the field, but also uh, am- amplifying the field. I think it's like the classics does not belong to some class of people, right? White or white males, cisgender men, middle class. It's like it's a way to put classics to the reach of everyone. That's why I said they kind of they can introduce these other works to a modern readership. So like someone who's read the Song of Achilles but has never read the Iliad may give the Iliad a chance, or Circe, someone who's read Circe. Oh, maybe I should give the Odyssey a chance. Maybe I should give Ovid a chance. Maybe I should give this all these classics a chance. So I think that there is it's not an agenda, but there is also I think because these women like Briseis, Penelope, um, Clytemnestra, because they did not have a lot of how to tell their stories in the past, and I think that female authors, they can relate to that, even like when you think about every time you have the poet calling for the muse, but we should also, but there are female poets as well, and they have their own muses that they must call to, right? So it's like, I think this is like, these women have something to tell, and being a female author, I wanted to tell this story from a different point of view. So I think that's no coincidence that these retellings are being rewritten by a female authorship. It's because they kind of, they have this, they can relate to what these women have passed. Like, what is it like to lose a husband or a child, like Astyanax, right? Odysseus kind of kills him very violently, very, like, how is it like to be like Andromache, or like even like Helen, right? And I think that um no male author can kind of approach that very like unbiased. So I think that there's a reason why these retellings are all being approached by female authors, because of they were so left aside, like in the main story, that no, wait a minute, I think that we now have something to share. And Briseis points this throughout the silence of the girls. So she mentions that now this is our song, and she mentions something like when she was a child, the songs were about going to war and about obtaining glory, and she realized that, oh, these songs were for my brother, not for me. But now I have a song too, and I think that that's the main point here, is to give voice to people who did not have a voice. But I think that also is a way to rescue our literary tradition, like like hey, this does not belong to just these people here, this belong to everyone, and everyone will learn something from it, and everyone will enjoy these stories and can relate to them. I think for instance, even though Achilles is self-centered, or he's angry, he's some sort of almost childish, I think we can relate to Achilles sometimes when we're very angry about a situation, when we think that we were misinter when we think we're like we suffered some injustice. I think we can relate to Achilles, like, hey, come on, you cannot do that to me. And I think that's the main reason they did that, like, to give these stories, like, not only different point of view, but also to present these stories to someone who might have not had the interest in reading them, because they thought, this is not for me. No, this is for everyone. And here is I'm showing you why this is to everyone.
In the light of what you've just said, it's quite interesting to think that you choose to deal with masculinity as a theoretical concept being deconstructed in a way in these novels, because women as authors of these novels, they might have a different view, a different perspective of the male traditional one. And masculinity in this sense can be seen, I think, almost as a counterpart of femininity and social constructions of what being a woman means and what being a man means. And it's quite interesting to use this theoretical approach in as you suggested, to understand a female point of view. Huh? Do you think that that makes sense?
Yes. Again, like, when you think of the Song of Achilles, for instance, even though Patroclus is a man, and even though and for me, it's quite clear the process of masculinization he goes through. There is also, like, there's a female hand behind his thoughts, behind his actions, and, like, because he's so sensitive, this, and again, this blur of femininity is clear here again. It's like he can be more relatable because of that. And I think that I chose to use the masculinity theory to see how these female authors can write this may, because the main point was to analyze Achilles' rewrite, Achilles' retelling, Achilles as he was rebuilt. And for instance, how Achilles is approached by these non-hegemonic narrators, and to what point they are these images of Achilles are different or similar. Because to me, Achilles or any other hero, they represent this highest point of masculinity. So the action movie here, for instance, for us they represent the maleness in its zenith, for instance. And for the ancient people, think about the ancient Greeks, Achilles and Heracles and the other heroes, they were the zenith. No arguing that. But when we think about a non-hegemonic narrator, how a non-hegemonic narrator would depict these scenes, would depict all this maleness, all this strength, all this warrior skill, they don't value that, and I think that that's interesting. Like how to see what a man should be like under the light of this society through the point of view of a narrator who does not share this view, and thinking about a modern readership does not share this view as well, right? So I think that maybe that's why they did that. Like they we analyze this guy here or write this guy here, but under the point of view of someone who is not like this guy, and who will be a totally different approach, a totally different view, a totally different portrayal of what people may have expected, for instance.
Yes, yes. And what you said made me think about Sappho's version of the War of Troy, as she depicts, for example, the marriage between Hector and Andromache in a very sinister way. And the song is quite, I don't know how to describe it, but it's quite a dark song. And also in her fragment 16, where she speaks about the thing one loves the most, and normally men love cavalry or infantry or things related to war. And the persona of the poem says, I love the beauty, or something like that. And then she starts to sing about Anactoria is her beloved. And there is a comparison, a straight comparison with Helen of Troy, who left her husband in Sparta and went to Troy with Paris, who is the guy she loves. And it's quite interesting that thinking an ancient woman trying to depict the war of Troy, and the kind of version we get. I think maybe the women's studies and the approach of women or female authors of the antiquity may be an interesting way of relating your masculinity theory approach with other ways of developing this idea of a female perspective of traditional events, traditional male events. I don't know if you know these songs by Sappho, but if you don't, I advise you to read it.
No, I didn't know that. I will look for it because it seems quite interesting, and I know the fragment because I think I've read with in one of your classes, even like, and I agree with you. Like for a woman in ancient times, like thinking about war, and even I think there is this in the Iliad. At one point of the Iliad, Homer kinds of he tells us war is for men, but the loom, the staff is for women. Like this gendered society, right? Gender work. There are works that are for men, that are activities that are for women, and these are part of our socialization, part of our construction as a gendered person, right? Gendered people, and this is what kind of defines what you are. So in a society like Homeric society, for Achilles to be seen as a man, he must fight, for instance. But for Precis, this does not matter. And even for Patroclus, this what makes Patroclus so deviant, almost revolutionary in Miller's writing. Like this does not matter to him. We still see him as a man, even though he does not take action, even he does not fight, for instance. And but for the ancient Greeks, that would be unthinkable. And again, this blur with the femininity, it still happens. I think in the when Achilles is out like grudging in his tent, and the committee goes try to convince him to go back to battle. Like there is this Miller does this analogy between this comparison between the names of in the Iliad also, right, the wife of Meleager is Cleopatra, and then there's Patroclus, and this is quite an association. There's no cannot mix, even there's no mistake here. She is comparing, his openly telling us he is the wife of Achilles. He's Achilles' companion. He's and this narrator, she just does not care for fighting skills or for Achilles' ability with the sword and shield or whatever. He only cares for this kind of humanistic side of Achilles, like the kind Achilles, the Achilles who is almost a knight again in the shiny armor, who rescues girls from Agamemnon's claws, and this is the Achilles that Patroclus gives us, and I think like it's and again, but this is what he was thinking about Sappho's poem. This is what Patroclus Miller considers as beautiful, or what he should fall in love with, and not war, and not war activity or spears or horses or shields, or this is what he considers like beauty or worthy falling in love with.
Yes, and Miller is a classical scholar, huh? And she really has a formation to develop a work that is quite informative at the same time. It's very amusing of reading, but at the same time, it's quite informative even for scholars, for ancient scholars, as she really develops some lines of thought, some references. I think she read everything about the War of Troy cycle, even the lesser authors, and it's very interesting to see how she explores many important details of the ancient works. But to finish, Tiago, I wanted to mention also the question of the voice, as you already mentioned in a way or another, as these two books have as titles the Song of Achilles. So the idea of singing about men, and the idea that tales are normally about them, dead white European males, and Pat Barker's novels called The Silence of the Girls, almost as a counterpart of that. If the men are sung, the women must remain with the silence. And at the end of her novel, I remember Barker makes a wordplay with the idea of his story, history. That is, his traditional history is the story of a man or men in general. And how do you think this image works in contemporary novels retelling ancient tales?
Like you mentioned, that there's this wordplay, right? The sound, the silence, and we have a lot of mention to singing, more specifically in Barker. She points out three, four, maybe some. A lot of times he points out that the women are singing in their tents. The women are singing while they are preparing the dead. The women are singing every time, and this is the only opportunity they have to do that. And she realized that again, the 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 war songs, they were to her brothers, they were to her husbands, to her father, to her male relatives, right? And there is no mention to a song that she could relate to as a child or as a young girl. However, now that you said that his story, If Achilles is when Achilles is killed and she can be like, I'm free now. She's also free to tell her story from her point of view, and that means that thinking about that's when also the connection between the ancient world. They did not have writing, right? So she the only way for her to tell her story was telling it using her voice. And I think that that's the point of the title here and the both novels, right? Is this value to voice, to be able to express your or to tell your story the way that the bards told them in the past. And I think that's the connection here. In the Song of Achilles, you have the mentions to Achilles playing the lyre and Patroclus only watching the scene, and he mentions this a few times in the novel. But like I said, men should be sung. There must be songs about war, about male activity in society. When we do not have a song about, I don't know, the loom, or a song about, first, a song about Penelope weaving Laertes' shroud, we do not have a song for that, for instance. And I think that that's the point of to give these new voices to these ancient tales. What is the voice of Penelope be like? What should be singing about if she could? So what breezes in the other Trojan women should be singing about if they could, if they were able to have a voice in their time. Like there's a point that Breezes tells us that she looks for other people, other women like her scattered through the Greek world. She's always looking for them, for other Trojan women lost, or who were captured and who were, and like this is also a way to keep and thinking about how the ancients saw the singing also as a source of memory, like poetry, singing, memory. Like it's a way when they chose this narrator, when they this female narrator, this female author to tell this story, is also a way to memorize it and to put it in literary tradition as well. Look, here's the Iliad, and this is the story of Achilles, but this is the Song of Achilles, so it can be also considered as the story of Achilles as well. Why not? Why you should not consider? And this is the Silence of the Girls, which also can be considered a side story or story of the Trojan War. Why not? Because here we have a narrator who is different, a narrator who does not sing about war, who does not sing about military prowess. Nevertheless, we have actually the contrary, right? We have a narrator who sings about her own life, about her own private, and how this life could be so intense and so difficult as a battlefield. In my point of view, like to be a slave, to be dominated by the men who killed your father, who killed your husband, who killed everyone you knew. For instance, like when this image of Achilles arriving in the city and sacking the city is like, it's brutal, and you think this is a story who must be told too. We must know this other side of war. We must know this other side of of a demonic masculinity. For instance, if Achilles is in my interpretation, is this representation of a demonic masculinity, this is a side that we should be aware too. So I think that's the point here. There's, there's this emphasis on voice and singing and sound. And again, this is for me. This is also a hint to connect to poetry, which is also the art of sound, the art of singing, the art of telling stories, of memorizing stories, and pass them on and on through the narrations.
Fantastic. And this makes me think about an essay written by the Indian cultural critic Chakravorty Spivak, Can the Subaltern Speak? And is a question and in the title, and she answers that no, the subaltern cannot speak, because if he or she starts to speak, he is not a subaltern anymore. It's quite a pessimistic answer by Spivak, but I think these retellings of the ancient myths are answering Spivak in a way and saying that maybe the subaltern can really speak, if we start to make an effort to hear them. And your words are very, from my point of view, very interesting, because I agree with that. I mean, if we start to paying attention and trying to understand things that may be subterranean in a way, we can see a lot of things that had been left aside from the traditional perspective. And wow, that's great. I mean, I really hope to read your research, um, everything you start writing from now on. And I think you have a lot of work to do, huh? Many new works being published, and I'm totally curious about your new readings. Thank you very much for our conversation. For me, it was absolutely great. If you want to say anything more, say it now.
Okay, thank you, Rafael. So yeah, I've been reading other novels like the ones that I told you earlier, like Penelope and um, A Thousand Ships also. And like you said, it's like about the subaltern can what will happen if they speak. I think that we tend to think that the world will I don't know will explode if we let the subaltern think or speak or speak their hearts. So, but the point is, I think that these stories can coexist. Like the silence of the girls does not take away all the shining that the Heliod has. Quite the opposite. Like again, I think we should read both with open minds, of course. Like two different stories, two different interpretations, but we should read them both. And this is like in regard both as part of a literary tradition about thinking about Western literary tradition. And I think again, this is a way to keep these stories alive too. Like when the subaltern speaks, like he's also um, keeping this memory, this story alive through him, right? And I think there's like this is important to like keep the memory alive, keep the story alive. This is important to even more specifically thinking about Western literary tradition, for instance. Um, Again, I think I got carried away a little bit, but I would like to thank you for the opportunity again. If people want to take a look at my undergraduate thesis, I can send it to them. I will if you I write the email there somewhere, just I will send it to them. And I think that's it. One once more, thank you for the opportunity, for the patience, and I hope to see you soon.
It was an honor for me. I'll write your email in the description of the video, so if anyone can write to you, it's possible to get your undergraduate thesis. And this conversation also made me think about a book written by some Italian classical scholars that is called Submerged Literature. And it's actually about the idea of a whole class of poems that were submerged from the literary perspective because they were made by women or children or non-hegemonic peoples. And it's very interesting, the idea that, for example, lullabies were absolutely sung throughout antiquity, and we almost have known lyric from a
Oh,
lullaby because people just didn't bother to write it down.
oh, that's true, right? I think you have an interesting point there. It's like it's not worthy, right? You should not pay it. You should disregard this because this is not. And this remind, I think it was. I was reading your dissertation these days, and then you raise a very interesting question that is, when we choose a major poet, for instance, even without intention, we put other works aside. And but there are consequences to that, right? There are some implications. There are something when we do that, when we disregard one author to elevate another. It's like, but this other author here, he has something to say, and what is that? We should know what this guy wanted to say, right? And I think that was um it was insightful, even like there is something that we do not know because we in the past people chose for us as a point of view. For instance, like when they say lullabies were sung and they are still sung nowadays. But now that you said that, it struck me like we do not have, I don't remember seeing any kind of lullaby. And it's like, but they existed, and they are also part of this oral literary tradition of ancient times as well, right? And they do not have a shred of evidence that they exist. Right? We know that, like you said, but we do not have access to them anymore, and that's sad. But I think we should try to think about even as literature as a sort of an extension of human memory. I think it's quite sad when we lose those things. And even though with the best of intentions of preserve one poet or one author, it's like we've it's like for instance in my undergraduate thesis, like I do not think that people should only read the Song of Achilles or the Silence of the Girls. No, people should read that, but they must also read the other works too, to keep this tradition alive, and to keep memory alive too, and also to make their minds, to make their opinions for themselves, because it's also easy, like when now, so classics is difficult, or Homer is difficult, or you don't know that, you've never tried it, so how can you say something like that? And it's like we do not we should pay attention to not do that even in our own time, like, oh no, I just read that, I don't, because take care not disregard other authors or other traditions, because they have a lot to teach too, in my opinion.
Exactly,
They have
exactly.
a
I
lot to
totally agree, and I think that canceling people or works of art is a bad strategy if you really want to understand something. Is not the way of going around it. I mean, you need to read things, see things, experience things if you want to understand them, and you can judge afterwards, but not first before reading, huh? Or before
Yeah,
experiencing something.
because it's easy to say, to repeat a commonplace opinion, friend. Is pretty easy. I can repeat any opinion I've heard on the streets, for instance. But do I really agree with that? Maybe I don't. I
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that.
Yeah, and canceling was what actually the antiquity made, for example, with these lullaby songs, but also with these female work songs. They are mentioned some places. For example, Plato mentions them in the Republic, or even Homer mentions Circe was singing or
Yeah,
Penelope was singing, but we never get to see the exact words, the lyrics, huh? They are not written down.
yeah, and that may this is like this is sad, right? Like those should be very interesting words, right? Like we should know, we should have access to what Penelope was singing while Odysseus was away. Like, was she really this dedicated wife, always waiting? So I think this would contribute to a new image of her too.
Totally. Thank you very much for our conversation here, Tiago.
Thank you.
Uh, I really wish you good luck with your research, and let's keep in touch, huh?
Thank you. Yes, we will.
And thank you everyone who will watch this video sometime. It's been a great honor. Normally I don't speak in English, but as Tiago's work was written in English about two English or American novels, we decided to do that. And thank you very much, Tiago. See you.
Thank you again. Bye bye. See you.